On this episode of Industry Relations, Rob and I talk about Norlando. Let's go. This is Industry Relations, a podcast that's at the intersection of real estate and technology from an insider's perspective, with Rob Hahn and Greg Robertson. Hey everybody, I'm so happy to announce our newest sponsor, RentSpree. RentSpree is LA-based and is a provider of award-winning rental software that helps real estate agents, owners, and renters to simplify and automate the entire real estate rental process. From listing to lease, these guys have got it figured out. With nationwide coverage, RentSpree is an all-in-one platform is known for its easy and secure interface and suite of rental tools, including tenant screening, rent payments, marketing, and renter management. To date, RentSpree has partnered with over 250 of the most influential MLSes, associations, and brokerages, and they have over 1 million users throughout the U.S. That's great. In fact, they just announced a deal with the Miami Association of Realtors. This brings their agent count in Florida to over 120,000 agents, with over 600,000 total in the U.S. that is able to access RentSpree through their MLS or association. RentSpree is ranked 625th on the latest Inc. 5000 fastest growing companies list in 2022. Also, check out the show notes for rentspree.com. They just issued a white paper that talks about the opportunities that agents can have by incorporating rentals in their business model. I've written a lot about this. I think it's a great strategy. So please visit rentspree.com to download that white paper. Thank you, Michael, and the entire RentSpree team for sponsoring Industry Relations. Rob and I really do appreciate it. So go visit rentspree.com today.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to an episode of Industry Relations with Rob and Greg. For those of you who are watching on video, I'm trying to be like Darth Rob, but I don't know if it's working. But this is your co-host, the notorious Rob Hahn. And with me, as always, it's the fabulous Greg Robertson.
I was going to, hold on, Rob. I was going to call you, I don't know, I think you're more of a Sith there than a Jedi with that hood over your head there. I don't know.
Well, I mean, Darth is a Sith, right?
Oh, that's true, yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
So you're exactly right.
The Darth Lord, the notorious Sith RB.
Excuse me. So, God, it's good to at least see on video. I know you went to the party in Florida.
Yeah.
I didn't go, and I'm really glad I didn't, because I've heard from a lot of people that I'm like, really? You're flying into hurricane? Is that what I'm hearing?
No, more travel stories, but I mean, I was supposed to go through Houston and then had to change my plan, and I left through LAX, and we just through Denver, and then I think we landed like at 2:30 when they shut down the airport on that Wednesday at 4. And it was, it was raining or something. It wasn't that bad when we landed, and we got to the hotel. And there was more people I thought that were at the hotel. I think they had arrived earlier, but I had 19 meetings scheduled, and we had a suite at the Hyatt there, and what we like to do with that NAR annual is like bring our bigger customers in, talk about last year and what was good and bad about it, and what about the future, and then hear from them, right? So it's always a good time to kind of sync up, and but about 19 meetings scheduled. I think about 6 or 7 had to cancel. Oof. Some MLSs just didn't come out right at all. Yeah. Or maybe had just some staff that were there or volunteers that were there. So not great in that respect. What we'll do probably just organize some Zoom meetings afterwards. Yeah. But the thing is like, so Thursday it was howling, but I mean, having lived in Florida, this barely made a Category 1. But you're not gonna land a plane in that. Yeah. And I think it screwed up all the flights so much that people wouldn't be able to come in until Sunday anyway. Yeah. Yeah. So what's the point in a sense, right? So, but after Thursday, Friday and Saturday were and I left Sunday, they're beautiful. I mean, so it was just like this weird, if you didn't get in that time, then it kind of screwed everything up. But enjoyed it. Not, meeting with the MLSs, I think, and talking to them, I mean, so you have kind of a mixed bag a bit where I think a lot of them have all kind of saying that they think next year is going to be flat, where you heard these stories of like flat as far as membership.
Oh,
right. So
that seems optimistic. Okay.
Well, I mean, none of this stuff is like gonna like, we have a trial in February, right?
Right.
But that's, that's going to take a while to go down. That's going to be appealed. That's going to be several years. I mean, I don't think these kind of changes coming are going to be, as far as on the lawsuit thing, are going to be that dramatic. I think, MLS memberships, as we've talked about before, are probably the last subscription they'll cancel to being in the business, right? But they just don't think, like, they've seen months where like, hey, 400 to 500 new members, right? I think that's not going to be the case, right? So you're going to see a little bit more of like.
No, I guess I meant more. I guess I went more in terms of housing market. Like
no, I was talking. I mean, I was thinking membership. That's what I was talking about.
But aren't most of those renewals happening now?
Well, I think for every MLS is different. Some are annual, some are quarterly, some are whatever.
True.
So it's all over the place, right?
True. Well, all I'm saying is like I've been doing a lot of like listening to earnings calls and stuff. You know what I mean? And most of the companies are predicting 2023 to be like awful, like 20-25% down.
Right? In what metric?
Transactions.
Transactions. Okay, yeah. I mean, that's I'm talking members.
No, I know, but here's what I meant. So, for example, EXP came out and talked about we expect 2023 to be, pretty bad. So they're setting up a referral-only company because they expect a bunch of their agents to stop being agents, right? And if you go referral-only, then you don't need MLS, you don't need NAR, you don't need any of that, right? You just hang your license and then
well, they're not stopping being agents then. They're still
that?
Agents. They're not stopping being agents then.
They're just referral-only.
Right, but they still have a license.
They still have a license, but they don't need MLS membership. They don't need NAR, is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, I mean, again, I would say most of those people are going to keep that'll be the last subscription. They're going to keep their license and they're going to keep their MLS subscription. I mean, that's, I mean, if you're going to have somebody, if you're going to do a referral, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, you're going to get somebody to call you saying, hey, what about this? You're going to want to be able to, do a little bit of research for that thing to communicate with the other agent that's on the MLS and doing things. I mean,
okay.
But as far as transactions, I totally believe you. But
yeah, okay. So
the other thing is, like, everybody obviously is looking for ways, like, as you look in the future, if it's going to be flat or whatever. I mean, you always got to look for ways to trim or to be smart about your buying decisions going forward. Those kind of things as well. Yeah.
So what was the mood overall at NAR?
Well, it's hard to say. A little bit. It's a bit of the whole hurricane and that whole situation kind of clouded, pardon the pun, or whatever you call that. Everybody's kind of talking because that conversation overrid everything, right? So it's hard to get down to the below, like, it was all just travel stories. Like,
okay.
What did you have to do to do this? And I had to go through this, and I got stuck in here. My flight canceled. It was just a bunch of that stories, and it really couldn't get a lot beyond that. Beyond that scuttlebutt. I mean, there's still talks about the kind of things like the RE distribute.
Okay.
MLS is kind of working together a bit, more and more, and it goes back to just this continuation of everything being topsy-turvy. The world is upside down, where vendors become participants, MLSs become vendors, and everybody's just trying to kind of navigate that new world. It's like, I remember being in some of my meetings and we had some slides, and like one of the customers coming in was also had some products they were offering as MLS that were competitive to what we had. So we took out a couple slides because, and that just seemed a very weird thing to do with a customer of yours, right? And they feel it too. It's everybody wants it both ways, but it's like, we're just kind of living in a new world, and it's hard to navigate in that type of environment, right?
Yeah.
But overall, it was just good to see people together. I think we're still not 100% as far as, and again, the hurricane got the level level of participation in the event was down, of course.
Yeah.
but still, I know the traffic at the booth, from what I heard, was a little bit down. I got some great pictures from Andy from their homes.com. The homes.com booth was huge.
Sure.
And then the party where I got a video of John Mellencamp playing there.
Yeah.
So I think the homes.com party was going off as usual. Probably less people than they would have liked, but maybe it's a good thing because they didn't have to spend so much on alcohol.
So I guess one interesting question there is, again, there's no way of knowing, and there's part of that wishes that I had made the trip just for this piece of intel. So you and I tend to be much more enmeshed in the MLS side of things.
Right.
And we know how that community thinks about CoStar.
Right.
With a little bit of wary, like somewhere ranging between wary, do we want to do business with them, all the way to, like outright hostility, like, hell no, you're coming to take my lunch, right? What I was always wondering was, what about the Realtor Association side, right? And kind of the non-MLS realtor people. That's really what most of NAR is, right? Like these concerts are really aiming at like the realtor junkies, who are average members or their board members, their local leaders, whatever, but they're flying in to have meetings about affordable housing, whatever, or legislative something or another. And now, like, ooh, look at this huge concert. You're listing your lead. Like, do they have a different perception of CoStar and HomeSnap and Homes.com?
Oh, I'm sure, right? I mean, we've talked about this before where, I think for a lot of listing agents especially, this is like, this is what exactly they want to hear, right? Mm-hmm. So, but, again, as we said, it's they may be able to convince the agents to buy certain packages, but if the consumers don't show up to that site,
it doesn't matter.
It doesn't fucking matter. And then I did get one piece of I heard a little piece of thing where somebody had seen, I don't know, maybe Homes.com was showing a little bit of preview of what their site was going to look on. But one of the things I heard is that they were going to do was put transaction data for all the agents. Right?
Transaction data.
Right. So you could tell you could go to an agent and see, oh, I've done 7 transactions. That person has done 7 transactions this year.
Gotcha.
And I'm like, now, just kind of, in the back of my mind, I remember, didn't Redfin try to do something like that? And it just failed spectacularly because, and I think the thing was because of teams. There's not really a way that MLSs can track, they can put it all on one person, but a lot of the agents were pissed off, like, well, I'm part of a team, and it's unfair for it to be only listed to the broker or the listing agent part of that team.
Yeah.
And while I think consumers would love that data, I think at the end of the day, Redfin had to abandon that because the data coming from the MLS, and not the MLS's fault, it's just a weird tracking thing, more commission than anywise.
Yeah.
They couldn't really deliver that data in a way that the agents felt was fair.
Yeah.
Right. So that to me is like a very interesting thing. If you pair that with your listing your lead, and then you can see, I mean, I'm not sure if you're an average agent, which we know the average agent is doing any transactions, are they going to like that?
Of course not.
Right. So, I mean, but if it's geared to your listing your lead, you're going to like that because you're typically probably a listing agent and that lead's going to come to you. But you're talking about a small pie of all the agent population. I don't know. It's just, I haven't really thought about it, but I just remember that right now.
It's a good question. I don't know. I guess we should get some confirmation on what that's going to be, and maybe we should do a full-on show when the new homes.com launches.
Yeah, for sure.
The thing that I do think about, though, is Zillow is launching essentially a competing product. Right.
Yeah.
So Q3, they came out and they said, we're going to do, what is it, like listing media something or another?
Yeah, enhancements or something like that.
Something. But they're basically two products, right? One is where Zillow will go and take photos, videos, and stuff for a listing. And the other one is where it's listing showcase or something like that. So it wasn't real clear, but it sure does sound like paid listing promotion.
And we knew that Zillow would not stay still, right? We knew that they're not going to just sit there and let something happen. I mean, it's hard to be like all this conjecture because you don't know what maybe at one point they thought enhanced listings is going to be a stupid idea, right? So I mean, but they have to do something ahead of time to stop that perception, at least, right?
The question I have there is this, right? We both know some very smart people in the MLS space, but the way I look at it is, okay, CoStar did this, and I wrote about this. We talked about this, I think, on this podcast when we last talked about CoStar and Homes.com. It's whoever controls the copyright of the photographs has this huge advantage. So CoStar goes out, hey, Homes.com, whatever package, we're going to send photographers and video and all this stuff. We're going to do all this wonderful stuff for you. And then obviously we'll license to you, but we own it. All right. Zillow says, okay, no. We can't have that. Right. So they're launching, hey, we're going to do this for you. Are there MLSs doing this?
I don't think, I mean, to me, again, from just people listening to our podcast, and either I would bring it up or they would bring it up. It's like, I'm not hearing a lot of MLSs being too concerned about that copyright stuff, because I think for the most part, CoStar is agreeing to whatever the terms that the MLS is giving them. So maybe that's a red herring or not, or something right now, but it doesn't, it seems like they've been successful. I heard that, they've got a lot of MLSs already kind of converted over on the new agreements, right? So that seems to be going okay. So maybe this copyright thing is not that big a deal.
Yeah, maybe.
Or at least in the beginning here, they're starting with this, and who knows what's going on. Again, this is the same theme that we go back to. It's like, we think that it's not about them thinking they're going to beat Zillow, right? We think that's like the land war in Asia. We think, okay, well, maybe it's like this other end around a long-term strategy of controlling the copyrights and therefore the content. And then one day you wake up when we're in a CoStar world. Three, maybe they're just going to be out to be, they think they can make enough money of being a third tier player, a Zillow, Realtor.com and Homes.com, and make enough money to kind of complement that. But the fourth thing is I think, as we talked about, is what's the strategy? What's the business model? Because I don't think it could be one. I don't think it can be two. Actually, I don't even think it could be three. What is it? How is this going to be like a big transformational thing that Andy Florence is trying to do? Right. To me, it has not yet revealed itself in a sense.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's pretty obvious. They haven't come out and stated it, right? But obviously the fun that we have is we try and like read between the lines, and, speculate, and we think this is kind of the strategy,
right?
So I don't know. Like, I think the whole idea of, and he said this in the latest earning call, right? Which was, it's not about advertising agents, it's about advertising properties.
Right.
So he made a sharp distinction. So basically, he's saying that was Zillow, Trulia, Realtor.com, what they do is they really advertise the agent, right? Again, those companies will probably take umbrage. They will likely want to argue with him on that, but that's his take. Where he's saying, at Homes, at CoStar, we just want to advertise the property. Okay, so that's pillar one. Is that going to work? Is that what consumers want? I guess so. I mean, but it's not like they don't have a place to go and see properties for sale today, right? I mean, Zillow, Redfin, IDX websites, they all do a phenomenal job. So that doesn't seem like it's the real hook. I don't see a way. In other words, it's not like Homes.com. I'm trying to imagine like their Super Bowl ad, right?
Right.
It can't be, come where we advertise properties. Like that doesn't feel like it's going to have a hook. Right, because the watchers are like, I already use Zillow. I have all the properties, so that doesn't really feel like it's the thing. So what is it? Right? What is it?
Yeah.
Andy has said they're going to do some transformational deals. They've raised a lot of money, and we've talked about what some of those things might be. I don't know. There's a part of me that thinks that it could be open door after what we learned about third-party marketplace.
Right. Yeah. Other things that I heard, I think really finally after X amount of years of owning these kind of like disparate properties of Dot Loop and Bridge Interactive, and now Showing Time, and the Showing Time Plus thing is, I think they're really trying to step away from the Zillow name and really own the Showing Time, or Showing. Is it Showing Time Plus or Showing Time Plus? Showing Time Plus. And you know, they put an ad out for you know, I forget what the position was, but they kind of spelled out what that person could be. And by reading what that person could be, it's like, it's pretty clear they want to like almost be a transaction manager in a way, right? They want to, they want to, and I think they want to monetize this more than they ever had done before. Instead of making these things as like, I think they did monetize them to some level, but really go into the SaaS type of model with all this stuff. One of the things I heard that, you know, I hadn't heard before, but, you know, Zillow says that there's, of the 90 million showing requests they saw in 1 year, only 60 were filled. Right. So that to them is like that led to, I think, some of the thought process around buying Showing Time. Right. And again, it goes back to what we talked about of the difference between a lead and an appointment. Right. So if they can fill that gap up with this, and, you know, the other thing is that the super app really isn't like an app on your phone, but really this kind of platform or digital experience. So again, I think it's a little bit of a platform play in a sense, like of that. But it's going to be interesting. Another stat I heard from an MLS guy is that he said that 73% of their members have never been in a down market.
That is obviously true. Yeah.
Right. So that's, you know, that's a whole other kind of can of worms to look at. And think about as far as what that's going to mean for those agents that are, you know, maybe their skill set was like managing multiple offers, and now it's going to be really something different. What was another thing? You know, again on the Zillow stuff, this is from a panel I was on recently. They found that, you know, most agents are using 12 different software solutions in their transactions, which I thought was probably true as well, right? So that's kind of interesting. But yeah, you know, it's all over the place. There seems like there's, you know, new opportunities. You're kind of seeing like, you know, Zillow's making a pivot in the sense of they're putting them under one brand and like trying to focus as one entity instead of these three separate entities before. MLSes, again, looking to the future of being, okay, it's going to be flat. We're not going to see the growth we've been seeing. We've got to look at ways of different ways of doing things. The partnerships between MLSes seem to be growing. RE Distribute just announced another, I think it was Beaches that have joined them, and Stellar MLS that have joined them. I'm still very skeptical on RE Distribute. Not that I don't think that the people participating there are very smart people, but you know, I've just been around long enough, and a lot of them have too, with the Rebig, and RPR of, and maybe I don't understand it enough to know, you know, that selling data to Wall Street or whatever it is. Maybe I'm completely wrong about that. But it smells like that, right? Yeah. That's actually going to mean anything. But you know, everybody to me is just saying that, you know, 2023 is going to be a very interesting year.
Interesting year. What do they mean by interesting year? Well, I mean, you know, I think it's good. Sorry, but I think it's going to be the Crucible, man. I think a lot of companies are going to be
interesting. A Crucible could be interesting.
No, it's interesting, but in the sense of like, interesting could mean it's going to be like super fun and like, you know what I mean? I think it's going to be a Crucible. I think it's going to be a lot of ginormous developments that are going to really put a lot of stress on just a lot of organizations, right? So yeah, it's interesting, but interesting in kind of the, you know, oh look, let's see how these whatever slaves do against the lions in the Colosseum. Kind of interesting. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I know from, you know, I know from our own company and others I've heard, because of the layoffs and everything else, that I think employers think that they're going to have a bit more leverage over employees. I mean, you know, they're seeing that, you know, when you go somewhere, you just can't, offer $50,000 more than what they're making there to make that happen. So
Yeah.
Maybe that'll lead to more people going back to offices for work. Although I really don't think that's the case in a lot of technology companies.
I don't know, man. Like, look at Twitter, right? And you could say it's just Elon, right? You could just say it's just crazy Elon.
Right.
But he did say, hey, either you come to the office or you're fired.
Right. And then, on Twitter all day yesterday and most of the day, it's like they're waiting for Twitter to fucking shut down. So
Right.
I don't know if that's a good example of like.
But it hasn't shut down,
Not yet. No. I mean, I don't. Yeah. I think.
No, you're right. So I think that what I'm saying is if that ends up happening and he makes it like he somehow pulls through, I think a lot of tech CEOs are going to look at that and go, you know what? We need to do the same thing. We're going to fire half our people, right?
Wow.
We're going to move. One thing I do think is this is completely unrelated, but that whole Silicon Valley culture of like, coffee bars and meditation rooms and all this like
Skittles,
all this
free
shit
Skittles.
like snacks and
Right.
I think that might be dead. I think this 2022, 2023. So outside of housing, like just the economy is going to tank, right?
Right.
I think that might be the death knell for all that shit. It's going to be like, you want to come work at whatever XYZ tech company? Like, here's the deal. We're going to pay you a lot of money, right? We're going to pay you a lot of money. We're going to give you stock options, but you're going to work like a dog. Right. Like, because I think Elon's going to set that kind of that trend, he'll be the flag bearer of that. Now, if he totally bombs, right? So as a result, Twitter shuts down and whatever, he loses $40 billion, then then it's like, okay, don't do that. Everyone go back to the, meditation rooms and the free snacks. But I have this feeling like that's kind of what we're going to see.
Yeah, it's funny because there was a couple things I saw something on TikTok about, some project manager at Facebook about her day. Well, I start out and I have a delicious this at here, and then I go to have some avocado toast here.
Yeah.
And then I love the fact that I can get this and like it's like this,
it's a famous TikTok video. Yeah, it's gone viral.
Crazy. And then another thing I read was my friend had told me that, there really are people in the clouds living a much different life than us down here. And what she was talking about is that she lives in Austin and one of her friends works for Google.
Yeah.
And it says, and they were, I think she was visiting in town. Well, why don't you come to my office and we can start there and then we can go afterwards. So they go to the Austin office, go to the whatever floor, the 30th floor of this building, and there's sleep pods. There's a cafeteria. They have lunch, their avocado toast at, and they do whatever. And it's like this woman is looking at her friend going, fuck, man, this is your life. And her comment was like, it's just like all those movies where people are in the clouds or living this wholly different life than I am down here on the street level, right? And I got to visit that place, and it's just like the craziest thing in the world, right? I mean, just very funny and ironic in a way too, right?
Hunger Games, baby.
Yeah, for sure.
Hunger Games.
For sure.
So I don't know. Look, I was kind of hoping that there were more serious conversations happening at NAR. Like
there may have been. I mean, again, it's it's hard for me in the sense that I'm in that suite all morning and all afternoon, and then we go downstairs and we go to dinner,
right?
Then we go to the lobby bar, and then I go to bed, right? So it's just 4 days of that shit, right? So and in between I'll catch some some conversations from vendors and MLSes and associations and brokers and stuff. But I mean, it's just, exhausting basically. Right.
It ain't fun, man. It's business travel. It's not fun. Yeah. But because I just saw, we need to do a full show on the new, NAR, like buyer and seller report. It's like 140 pages. Like we need to go look through it, but I just glanced through a little bit of it, and there's some real there's some real problems that are getting revealed, right? Just as an example, the average age of a first-time home buyer is like 8 years higher than it's ever been, right? The average income of a home buyer is now over 6 figures, right? Like the average. So what it's, I mean, again, so the clear implication is that basically home buying is now getting pushed off to older, wealthier people. I'm like, yo, like, it's kind of that cloud land versus, us down here kind of thing. Like, I can't imagine there not being just outright rage, from the 20-somethings or the early 30-somethings, the millennials who got screwed, the Gen Z who are coming up. And, like, I can't ever buy a home. And here's the thing, like, NAR likes to talk about, because it's true, housing is at the center of everything.
Right.
Right. It's like, so if you can't buy a house, it just affects everything throughout society so much. And like, you would think the NAR would be the entity to really come out and take a strong stance, just publicly about that. And I feel like they haven't. Of course they'll talk about housing affordability, but the solution is like, well, we need to build more houses. We just need to build more houses. I'm like, yes, that's true, but I feel like there needs to be more. Like, just as example, like the $40 million they spend on promoting Realtor. I'm like, dude, maybe that $40 million needs to go towards like putting out a really clear message of like, housing is everything, right? We're getting screwed. Like, you young people are getting screwed, right? Here's the solution. And I feel like now's the time to have that conversation, because things are going to get really ugly next year. Like, we may come out of it, somewhere like halfway through it, but it's going to get kind of nasty for a while, right? I mean, just look at the layoff numbers that are coming out that we know about.
Yeah.
Because they're big enough companies. And if they're doing it, I guarantee you, smaller companies, small businesses, they're all doing layoffs and cutting as well. So it's like, it's going to get bad. And they're going to get pissed about housing. I'm like, we need to be doing something about that, And
then to me, like, there's, the example I give, and I'm not sure if I mentioned this, but was on Halloween, right? So, I mean, we just don't get a lot of kids here. Yeah. Right. And it's not like I'm living in some sort of, gated community that's whatever. I mean, it's Southern California, yes, but the people that are on the street and in the neighborhood, they've owned their houses for a very long time. It's so hard for a young family to break in here. Yeah. The two that I know of here are probably renting, right? So, but it's a shame, right? Because my house has gone up almost 50%. Yeah. Since 2014 when I bought it, and that's insane to think about. But who can afford? What young family can afford that type of thing to kind of move in here? It's just right. It's a bit sad for sure, right? And who knows what the answer is, but
what I'm saying is like that we don't know the answer, but clearly we're not talking about it enough, right? Right. It's like you and me are talking about it. Who the hell are we? You and me are like, right? We need like Joe Rogan to be talking about it. Right. You know what I'm saying? We need Biden to be talking about. We need like actual leaders and major voices to be talking about. Okay, can we talk about housing? Right? Because housing is at the center and the core of just about every other problem we have. Right? Employment is directly related to housing, because it's about the cost of living. Like, no one can afford to, like, companies can't afford to hire people because, the median home price in the city where they have an office is $3 million. Like, okay, well, I can't afford to hire anybody. It's right. Crime, all this, like, so much of it's around housing, and we're just not, we just talk about like how housing is too expensive, and I'm like, there's more. There's a lot more that we need to be talking about. Oh, NIMBYism, like, I don't know. Like, that's sort of like how I feel about that. And we just absolutely need to be doing more. And I would hope, that's kind of part of my hope, right? That I would hear from you, because I didn't go to NAR. They come back, it's like, hey man, every conversation, the overall mood is about housing. We need to save housing. Like,
yeah. I mean, especially in the MLS world, there's so many, the lawsuits are a big black cloud right now that, are concerning people. The overall environment of real estate is concerning. So those things are really taking front and center, where the overall.
Yeah, that's true.
About housing is just, it's just an aside.
Just a background dread. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's just all this other stuff that's going on. Everybody's trying to figure out what they're going to do. Right. So yeah, it's not a good situation that standpoint. But I mean, I mean, there's some stuff like, I mean, and I don't know if I agree with this or not, but apparently in San Francisco, there's a lot of houses that are just vacant, right?
Sure.
And either for like an Airbnb or just a second home that nobody's and I think what San Francisco is doing is they're putting a tax on those. So if you got a
like a vacant tax,
not be whatever, then you're going to put a vacancy tax in because of the housing shortage, right?
Yeah.
So there's some things. I mean, that's the People's Republic of San Francisco, of course, right? There's some things that are going out there. I know in LA here, they had a mayoral runoff or race like in some cities, and one of the candidates was talking about they're going to add 80,000 hotel rooms or something for the homeless to take care of the homeless problem. The big homeless problem in LA, and that's less than housing, and there's a lot of issues in there, mental health, cost of living, and all that kind of stuff. But they're homeless, so it is housing.
Yeah.
I don't know. Those are big things that maybe are above my pay grade as far as on a government level and everything else to kind of
Yeah. But like I said, that's hopefully stuff that we'll see more of, like next year.
Yeah, and like we're coming into, let's say, the fourth quarter here, right? Next week is Thanksgiving.
Yep.
To me, the industry is like, it's really tough to get anything done by Thanksgiving. So we're going to be going into the holidays, and we're going to wake up and again, like every year, it goes by quicker and quicker.
Yeah.
Right? We're going to wake up in January and have a brand new. Does the Fed meet between now and then?
Yeah, monthly.
Right. So everybody says because the CPI data wasn't as it had been taking it did make a good drop this time, unlike other ones that maybe they're going to slow that down from like 75 basis points to 50. Who knows? But it seems like they're really bent on sacrificing housing and employment to kind of bring that down, right? So how long are we going to continue those things, even if it's a 50 basis points through the rest of the next year?
I mean, I don't know. I have my opinions, but I think I'd much rather bring on economists and kind of get their take. But I don't know. So this got kind of gloomy. I was hoping it wouldn't be gloomy.
No, I mean, and again, it's like it's a little bit. It's hard to talk about these larger issues when these things that we've talked about ad nauseum on the podcast, and I don't want to get right back into lawsuits and everything else, that we talk about back into it, or with NAR again, the hurricane I think took center stage as far as sucking a lot of the narratives, kind of bringing out of that. But overall, I mean, there's been a lot of moves, with people joining different companies and different initiatives starting. So nobody's standing still here. We're just going to have to see how it all plays out. I mean, some of these ideas I think are really smart. Some of them not so much. And I think, what I always like to say is like ideas are multipliers of execution, right? So if you can execute on a great idea, it's going to be 400%. Where, if you execute on a bad idea, it's going to be 10%, right? So,
all right. So let's try and end on a happy note. Okay.
Yeah.
What's the most hopeful, positive thing you saw at NAR? Like this great idea, for example. They said, "Wow, that's really smart."
I guess this might be a cheat, but and I've talked about this a lot. It's just the community we have in this business, right? Getting to see people in person again, and just being able to kind of talk with them in person and share a drink, share a meal, and just making sure that everybody checking in on each other, right? That to me is like always one of the best things about this business is just the people in the business, right? Yeah. And this is vendors, this is association past presidents that I know, and MLS executives, MLS staff members, and all that stuff. To me, it's just there's a lot of people here that really care about this business. Yeah. And it's just great to see that.
Yeah, no, they're great people. That's one thing I will say. Real estate does have the best people. Yeah. It really does. Salt of the earth, people. Just great people. Ain't no denying that, All right. Well, let's wrap up. Like I said, this ended up being gloomy. I didn't think it would be. But sometimes you need a little gloom, in order for the light to be.
I don't know
right?
if it's gloomy. It's just not. It's not one of our. We're not fighting a lot, so that's. It's one of those kind of episodes.
We'll try and We'll try and find something we could fight about. I don't know. But the longer we do this, less we fight.
I will say this. I mean, I'll tell you this story. I mean, I remember when I got on the plane, when I was going from Denver I did make a connection to Denver to go to Orlando. I caught out of the right side of my eye somebody with their phone on, and I saw our industry relations thing on their phone. So they're listening to us on a podcast. And then I saw another gentleman, I think his name is Wes, who was sitting up near me, and I was going to the bathroom. I was coming back, and he says, "Hey, Greg." I'm like, "Oh, hey, how's it going?" And he says, "I'm just listening to your podcast right now." And I thought it was the most weirdest thing of all these people, I mean, it was two people, but in that same circumstances of listening to us. So I was.
But hey, those two people of our eternal gratitude, that's awesome. Thank you.
and you could tell, meeting with a lot of the MLSes, that they were listening to us and and wanted to tell me how much more right I was than you are in a lot of things.
Well, of course. Of course.
I'm making that up.
Of course. But you know what? Let's do that. Let's do that. Here's the promise. I think the next episode, we'll pick a topic, okay? And we'll make it like free consulting to these MLSs who are listening to us, right?
Okay.
We'll pick a topic with like, what should they do about this topic?
Yeah.
How's that?
It's so, but to me, what I find frustrating, I've always found this, I don't know about in your blog, but mine, it's that rarely do even, sometimes I'll get a text or sometimes an email, but rarely publicly do a lot of these guys want to come out and ask even questions, because it might tip their hand to what they're thinking.
Yeah.
And maybe I'll get it verbally more, but, and like I asked you in the beginning, if you heard any kind of comments on the BBP episode we have, because we don't know exactly what's going on. We're getting some mixed signals whether this is truly going to be an open source project or not, and I think we're getting conflicting things, but nobody's really coming out and telling us. Yeah. So that is kind of, it always has been something that's frustrating me at Vendor Alley. Yeah. And I just wish we'd get more audience participation, but. Maybe this is a call out to you guys. Please, I mean,
man,
DM us, send us, put it in the comments or whatever else. But we just don't
the industry would have to change far more before we see that. You're right. Yeah. Look, for the last 12 years I've been writing, like that's something I just came to realize. I get a lot more comments and emails and text messages and phone calls. Right? Nobody wants to say shit publicly. Yeah. I'm like, all right.
Well, just call me. Ask me so there's no digital record of this. That, what do you want to hear? What do you want to hear? What questions? What do you think? What do we wish we would talk about? I mean, I was give us some feedback. What are we getting? What are we missing? What are we getting right? I mean, just that. I mean, I do get positive things. I love your show. Yeah. I think, the relationship and the banter that you and Rob have had is you can be talking about I did hear that you guys could talk about anything together. It's just fun to listen to. So I really appreciate
we are good like that. I mean,
give me something else to, maybe there's an idea in there, Rob, where we like just come up with some, random talk if it's not real estate, and we'll see if we can kind of banter back and back.
Oh, I am so game for that. Yeah. I'm completely game. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you very much. Great to see you. Thanks for the update on NAR. And, of course, thanks to all of our listeners, including the two people who were
on the plane
caught by Greg. And appreciate everyone. And we'll see you next time.
Thanks, everybody.